a meagre pickings at the moment. We really did have it good when we had European football. That's for sure. But we've had a little look at the Lopetegui pre-match press conference. He's quite adept at using quite a few words to say nothing. I do think that early version of Lopetegui, the media-friendly version, is gone. He's very guarded now. He says very little, but he has said something which I think is accidentally insightful. And I think by seeking to praise Nottingham Forest and seeking to praise Nuno Espírito Santo, I think he's sort of perhaps shone a little bit of a light on where we're going wrong, certainly. It's what he said. It's what he said about Nottingham Forest. He said they're playing very well at the moment and competing very well. They have good technical players, absolutely fine. This is the bit now, he said. And they've got a very good coach who's got clear ideas. And that's why they're doing so well in the league. I think the reason that caught my attention is because I think he's probably right. I think they do have clear ideas, which means they've got an identity. He's clearly alluding to the fact that their tactics and they have a structure and the coach is imparting his ideas on them. We keep chopping and changing. I think we're seeing different halves. We're seeing some Moyes-like tactics in one half. We're seeing in very, very advanced high line. In another half, we seem to be flitting between two centre-backs and three centre-backs, or maybe a midfielder joined as a centre-back. It's just weird that he's highlighted an area of strength in the opposition that they're doing well, which is actually our weakness.
Yeah, but I would maybe throw it back at you and say the changes, if you want, are becoming Lopetegui's identity to some extent. It might not be one that he particularly wants, but maybe it is something that he does actually want to be associated with as head coach at West Ham, in the sense that he does have two systems or two ways of playing, or that at a flick of a switch, we can go from one style to another style. And I do think there are similarities depending, say first half football, second half football, just to keep it really simple for a second. I think there are similarities between how we play in each half that follow over. There's some differences, of course. So I actually think that I think we are starting to get more of an idea of how Lopetegui wants to play at West Ham over the last few weeks compared to the first few weeks. It doesn't necessarily mean we like it and doesn't necessarily mean it's working, but I think we're starting to see his vision to some extent. I'm glad you tune into the press conferences, though, because it's not something I can do. I've tried to, but I struggle because I don't really know what he says in terms of what he actually says.
You probably need some kind of translator, Gio.
I do definitely need a translator. And then when I can work out what he said, I don't find it very insightful. And a lot of the time, I don't find it like that he answers the actual question posed to him by the journalist. I think he just gives an answer and doesn't really marry up with what he's being asked, and I think it's a bit of a mess at the minute, his press conferences. So it's not something I've tuned into over the last few weeks because I find myself more, I'll be honest with you, I find it a waste of time, actually. While perhaps the previous manager was a bit spiky, at least he said something, and at least you got what he said. You might not have liked what he said, but you could understand what he was meaning. But Lopetegui, not so much. In regards to this one, yeah, I think he's bang on about Nuno and Forest. In regards to himself, with those same sort of summaries, if you want, I think we're getting an idea of it. I'm just not convinced it's going to work.
No, I think the other thing is I'd agree. You've got this first half and this second half thing going on, and you can make the comparisons, almost in reversal in terms of the way round they were against Tottenham and against Manchester United. But I'm not sure. I think the thing I picked up on was clear. And I think he's got these ideas and that is his identity, but it seems bloody complicated. And I think the more complicated he makes it, so it's almost like he's got this back to basics thing, which I think was possibly forced upon him because of Chelsea. So I thought that might have been the very apex of the complication. I'm quite sure in his own mind, when he played out the tactics before we got thumped by Chelsea, before Jackson started running amok, particularly with Edson Alvarez, I'm quite sure in Lopetegui's mind that probably worked out when he was managing it in his mind's eye. It made sense to him. clearly he couldn't convey it to the players, and he's alluded to that much himself. That's why he was talking about maybe, getting some translation, and maybe I can't sort of, articulate my ideas correctly, or whatever it was he said. I think that's why we look at our best when it actually goes back to simple. So it's back to basics. So I think it's that's it more than anything. I think it's these clear ideas, and that's the thing. Does he have an identity? I think we're starting to see it. Does he have a bunch of tactics? Yes, he does, but they seem so bloody complicated. They really do. I've got to tell you though, I know I said 3-0 in our I said 3-0 to Forest. I'm starting to believe we might be able to win the game, actually. What about you? Are you not swayed
No,
at all?
I think I still feel quite confident we're going to lose without scoring. I think just because Forest's strengths are their defence, they're really good defensively, and our weaknesses offensively. I don't think we're creating much opportunities, and I think we've got some players capable of doing something of individual brilliance, but one of them suspended in Mohamed Kudus. So I think that's sort of taken out, and it's sort of like I feel a little bit Jared Bowen FC at the minute in terms of going forward. And if he starts Somerville, that would help. And I think he has to almost through default here. And I think, last week he made the wrong call. If he doesn't start Somerville, I think, I don't know. I think there's going to be a lot of people angry about that one, understandably so. And I think Somerville would be within his rights. Hang on a minute. Where's my opportunity here? As soon as Kudus was suspended, he must have been rubbing his hands a little bit. You can maybe swallow not starting against Man U, but when you come on and change the game, you're thinking, right, I'm definitely starting next weekend. And I think he will. I think he will start him. But I always get a little bit frustrated when something like that is forced upon the manager rather than his choice. It's not like do you know what I mean? If he starts Somerville against Man U, it's great. But because it's like forced upon, and also his justification for not starting Somerville last week against Man U could get exposed very quickly if he starts Somerville against Nottingham Forest, because the reason he gave was, from one of his press conferences, was, well, I brought Somerville on because I knew Man U's legs would be tired or something of that ilk, right? Well, Forest ain't going to be tired in the first minute of the game. So if that reasoning is still applicable this weekend. So if your genuine reason for not starting Somerville was to bring him on against a tired defence, then by right, you're then going to keep him on the bench against Nottingham Forest and bring him on later in the game when he's up against a tired defence. So if he starts, I think what it does do is suggest that you maybe fibbed a little bit last weekend as to why you didn't start Somerville. It's easy in hindsight. Listen, as a manager, when you make a sub, he comes on, he gets a goal. It's easy to sit there and say, well, I knew that would happen. That's why I started him on the bench, because the evidence is already there. What he didn't do before the game was say, I've not started Somerville because I'm going to bring him on later on up against a tired event. He's going to change it. He didn't claim that. He claimed it after the event had happened, which I think is,
What do you think? Because we're doing a preview, the teams we'd like to see. What do you think? Well, we'll go. That name is 11 tomorrow.
Fabianski, Wan-Bissaka, Todibo, Kilman, Emerson, Alvarez, Rodriguez, Souček, Paqueta, Bowen, Antonio. I'm not sure he starts Somerville. I'm not sure he drops Paqueta, I think.
No, I was worried about. So your formation, I take it he's now playing Paqueta on the left.
I don't know actually. It's a hard one to call, really. Maybe he doesn't bring Souček in. Yeah, let me revise that. I'll say he doesn't bring in Souček. So I'll say that back four. I'll say Rodriguez, Alvarez, Somerville, Paqueta, Bowen, Antonio.
Yeah, I think so as well. In fact, the only one he would have heard it. He would have heard the sarcastic cheers when the announcer said Somerville's coming on at half time. It's about the only bit of my version of the game wasn't skipping and jumping. Actually, I heard that bit. It was So I don't think he'll do that. I do wonder about Mavropanos. I do think he'll start Paqueta, and I've heard some people say they thought he was like on the road to recovery as well. Paqueta in the last game. I think, that's a tough call. Do you know what I mean? I think there was some nice little exchanges with a little bit with him and Emerson, but I thought it was more Emerson than Paqueta. you've got to think at some point, we could probably bury this in this video, to be fair, just talk about it quickly now rather than making another Paqueta video, and because legally and all the rest of it, old Uncle Bruno's been I don't know if he's look, he ain't been turning up, has he? He's been trying. They've all been trying to wriggle out of the sort of court case, haven't they? And go into the hearing and postponing it. And as we discussed just before we went live, Paqueta's going to miss the Leicester game. But you got to think, Gio. Would you not think at some point the pressure's got to start telling on him, and Lopetegui is going to have to start listening and start taking him out of the team?
Yeah, I think that point was a few weeks ago, to be honest with you. I do. I think it's now we're almost playing him. I don't know, maybe West Ham think if we drop him, is it a sign that we think he's guilty? Is it that part of it? Or West Ham worried that we look like we're putting a nail in his coffin by taking him out the side? I will say, in defence of Paqueta, which is more than Uncle Bruno's done, is that...
Paqueta himself!
I'm intrigued to see how he gets on with Somerville in the team. I think they might actually link up quite well. I think Somerville... Kudus could be quite selfish, and with him being left-footed and on the left, naturally he wants to drive at the right back, and Paqueta's in his rear-view mirror. But with Somerville, who likes to come in field, he then sort of enters Paqueta territory, and I think that's where you might start to see some passing triangles between those two going on. So it's with a hope and a prayer that would work. But that's the only thing. It's got me. If Paqueta does start, I don't think he should. I think he will. But if he's got Somerville next to him, I will be intrigued to see how those two get on, actually. I think there might be a little partnership there in terms of just the way that both players play. It should suit each other.
Yeah. Well, listen.
But I'm clutching at straws there, Gonzo. I'm clutching at straws.
Yeah. Absolutely. So he'll be able to dictate, tell him what to do, make that run in behind. We'll play a little 1-2. Take a booking in the 78th minute. And or he could do what he's told, can't he, Somerville? As a joke. It's a joke. I don't think he's guilty. It's not for me. I'm not a judge, am I? I'm not a judge. I'm worried about it, though. I am worried. I am slightly worried that he might have done something naughty. Anyway, right, we're gonna leave it there. Gio, thank you very much for joining me. As I say, meager pickings at the moment. If you want a little bit more juicy stuff and you want to hear a load of talk about pumpkins, Peppa Pig, smart motorways, digitized motorways, and a load of other stuff in our non-football based podcast, then why don't you go and give Patreon a free trial? We've got a 7-day free trial over on Patreon. You can listen to our naked podcast. We talk about other things aside from football, but if you still want football over there, we got more football podcasts and videos than you can shake a stick at.
I got robbed at my own doorstep.
Yes!
Literally.
Yes, you can watch footage of You can watch footage of Gio. Somebody stole Gio's pumpkin from his door. A trick-or-treater. And this Gio's was generous. He was handing out the chocolate and sweets. Don't worry about that. Someone stole Gio's... No, actually, it's worse. They didn't steal Gio's pumpkin. At the front of Gio's door, there was a pumpkin carved by Mrs. Gio, who'd never carved a pumpkin before. And Gio's work of artistic brilliance from a man that is clearly a pumpkin carving Picasso. And they stole Mrs. Gio's pumpkin right in front of the doorbell camera. And do you know what made me laugh? Was he walked up all casual like, and when he picked up the pumpkin, he ran.
Legged it.
He legged it. What I was wondering, though, Gio, and we'll finish with this now. You got to check this stuff out. Patreon.com/HammersChat. What I did wonder, though, is did he carry on trick or treating? And then actually, when he reached another house that possibly had a pumpkin better than Mrs. Gio's pumpkin, did he then take Mrs. Gio's pumpkin, leave it on their doorstep, take that pumpkin and scarper?